Hey, welcome to the 398th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patron Mike Slane. I'm Matt Enlow.
And I'm Oren Kaplan, and today we have Tom Morris on the podcast. Finally, he's a buddy. We've been trying to get him on for a while, but he's always so busy doing his thing.
Too busy working.
He's become a really good friend of mine almost overnight by Hollywood standards. I think I met him maybe like a year and a half ago.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. And I worked on a job with him. I did some visual effects on something he directed. And he was just like, hey, let's grab a drink or lunch or something. He doesn't drink anything other than water. It's a weird thing about him.
We talk about it a little bit. We'll see if it makes it in the episode.
Yeah. We just became friends. And it's a thing. Like, do you do that, Matt? I feel like you don't.
Make friends?
It's not make friends, like reach out to other people that do the same thing you do. And I know you're going to give me some lecture about having this podcast. And I think you said that in the interview, but it's like, it's different. I have like a little network of director friends. You're a part of it, but like Carlin and Tom and a few other friends, a few past guests of the podcast that I call to just talk about directing things. When I'm pitching on stuff, I get their advice.
The brain trust. Yeah.
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 And recently, you know, Jessica Sanders, she was a past guest. She's been directing commercials for a million years. And she was talking to me about profit participation, which is something that commercial directors often get, which is you get a percentage of, if you come under budget, you get a percentage of how much you came under budget. Like it can be 10%, 20%. Kind of depends on a lot of different things and what your deal is with the company you work at. But I've actually never gotten anything out of it.
Participated in said profits?
I've never participated in said profits. And allegedly, the current company I'm with will participate with me in some profits. They calculate them 90 days after the end of the calendar year. But Jessica was saying to me, hey, I get my profits after every single shoot. 90 days after every shoot, I get my profits. And sometimes my profits are more than my rate. So she's like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you're leaving like tens of thousands of dollars on the table if you're not fighting for these profits. She also recommended to me this guy who Carlin also recommended. His name is Scott something. And you basically hire him as a consultant. I think he's, you got to pay a pretty penny for him. I think somewhere in the vicinity of $400 an hour for him to look at your contract. But supposedly he's an expert at commercial directing contracts and how, so he can help you maybe get repped if he can think of a right place for you. But he can also just say, oh, these two companies want to sign with you. You should sign with this company and let me negotiate your deal. And from what I hear, he's way more than worth it, because if you are getting, you hire him for 2, 3, 4 hours and then you get off your first jobs couple $1,000s in profit participation, he's paid for. The reason I bring that up is because I don't know what's wrong with me, but I've never really thought of this as like a income source and never really fought for it too much. But when Jessica told me about it, I reached out to my network of directors. I said, do you guys get profit? Like, Tom, do you get, Carlin, are you getting profit participation? Reached out to all my people. And so, yes, so that's my question to you. And it's part of this is a question to you. And part of it is like my advice to other directors. Is like, it seems weird, but try to become friends with other directors that are doing what you're doing, even the ones you're competing against, even the other ones. And, obviously you went to film school, so you had this whole network of directors. And I assume you were kind of competitive with each other too, to some degree.
I don't.
Isn't it like only some people get to direct thesis films and all that stuff?
Yeah. But that's more of a political game than it is anything else. And so I think there were kids who were mad then. I'm sure there were kids who were mad then, but for the most part, it was a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, I think that like, first of all, co-signed, it's good to have a group of people that you can rely on to ask business questions, creative questions, etc. I think that's really good. I think that Tom is a really affable guy. And so he has a knack for just like, chatting people up and putting himself out there and, saying hello. I think it served him really well and is really cool. And I think that, I think that I used to have that more. Over the years have let that fall by the wayside. I had, I think everyone kind of over the course of their career, they go through cycles of different versions of their career or lives or attitudes. And so certainly film school was one time. I had a lot of like web video, internet buddies, and then working director buddies. And then in the last few years, I've let it kind of fall by the wayside as my life has gotten a little bit more complicated. It takes a lot of bandwidth to maintain relationships, and so
it does. But I think part of why I like my little band of fellow directors, commercial directors specifically, is because it does take a lot of energy. And I used to rely on my wife for all of it, and, obviously you too. I talk to you a lot about work, obviously,
sure,
in public. But I would say like, oh, I want to get this job and I wrote this script and can you read this and can you do this and can I have this? Do you have ideas? And she would be like, dude, chill out. Like, don't talk about work for 5 minutes. We have all this other life stuff to figure out. And I don't want to just hear about your anxiety about work all the time. So I've tried to, I obviously still talk to her about the big decisions and I bring a lot of the celebrations and the wins and obviously like some of the big losses, like, I didn't get this job. I'm so sad. And she'll, make me feel better or whatever. But the like minutia of it, I've now, instead of bringing it to her,
you're not like,
to
babe,
friends.
what do you think of these two fonts? Hold on, let me show you a few more. Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think that this conversation with Tom, I've thought it's rare that we record our intros so far after the conversation, but for whatever reason, that's what's happened this time. And I've thought about the conversation with Tom a lot because I think that there's a lot of really great points that he makes and just kind of casually drives by. And it reminded me of a lot of the things that I used to do to stay sharp, to stay busy, to stay connected. That have, my life has changed a little bit. And so I left that conversation excited to reignite certain things in my life, to get back to reaching out to director friends or just not even director friends. Cause I think there are people probably in different markets where it's like, well, I know every director in my town and it's two of us,
right?
But like creative people, people who are passionate about making things together or alone and sharing ideas and sharing the business and craft of it all. So I think it was a really great conversation.
Yeah. And Tom, he's not like, a 21-year-old, like recent film school grad that's like
he's
can
got
travel to Bulgaria.
Yeah.
He's got 3 kids. He's married. He's got, responsibilities and money has spent. So it's not, despite all that, he really is great at networking and going out and meeting people and meeting clients and doing all the things. So I think it's a really good interview with him. He's a great resource, and I encourage you to find your other filmmaker friends. And I think most filmmakers like to talk to other people, and even if you think you look up to them and they're a few years ahead of you in their career, like I mean, I'm probably the worst at it, but I love to talk about filmmaking to whoever wants to talk to me. It doesn't matter what stage they are in their career, as long as they're passionate. So I think feel free to reach out to anyone you meet that is a filmmaker, and they might not respond to you, but they might also respond to you. So it's super helpful.
You're making me think of one other point before we get into our conversation with Tom, just about myself and about that I think maybe people can relate to, because currently I'm working with a whole team of people that I like very much, who are all very creative, post people, writers, like the whole gamut. And in a lot of ways that scratches the itch of having meaningful creative conversations about the work. And then also about more lofty things, that happens from 7:30 in the morning till hopefully 5 or 6 at night.
Right.
pretty regularly. But that is not the same as what you were describing, even though it sort of feels the same. And I think that creative jobs where you use your artistry are not the same as you doing your art, is something I say on the show all the time. And it kind of that idea applies to what you're presenting as well, Oren. Talking about creative things is not the same as talking about your creativity with your peers.
Right. Yeah. And also I bet with your work colleagues, it's harder to like lament and complain and see like they like, I didn't get this job or this didn't work out. Like you have, especially in your position there, you kind of are a leader. So you have to be a little positive.
Well,
on the positive side, right?
I am aware of the fact that people need to complain about their boss. And for most of the people I work with, I am their boss, And so there's a little bit of like,
at meetings, you should just say, like, plug your ears and say, for the next 5 minutes, complain about me.
Everyone no, but truly though, like if you come in and you're like, hey, listen, we got to do this thing that I know no one wants to do. I'm going to let them gossip at lunch. It's not like I'm like, creating a forum for that or whatever. But like, I guess what I'm saying is that I understand it.
One last thing I want to say about our talk with Tom is we did have it before the strike ended, the SAG strike ended. So I don't know. We'll see what Noah leaves in there or not. But
Oren, do you remember you called it?
Oh, I said, I hope it's over by the time this airs.
You said, I think it's going to be done by the end of the week. And I remember being like, what are you talking about, dude? And it was.
Oh, yeah. I think I just read something promising on Deadline or something right before we recorded. But yeah, do you think this will affect you?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Obviously, for your feature, it affects you a lot.
Yeah. Like literally, we're going to stop recording and I'm going to finish offer letters. So yes. But also, I think there are probably plenty of listeners at home who are like, no, it's not going to affect me at all. I'm not trying to make a movie. I don't work in the union or whatever. There's a halo effect about work being done and the ecosystem kind of leveling out a little bit more. I have not worked as much commercially this year, and I think a lot of it has to do with people who are higher in the food chain, people who are doing television shows, not doing television shows for the last, couple 100 days and needing to put food on the table. So they are taking jobs that normally I would get.
Yeah. Even TV actors, I know. At my preschool, there's a TV actor that works a lot that's been on a million shows, and you would recognize him. And I was just talking to him the other day. I was like, what have you been doing during the strike? He's like, dude, I just do commercials all the time, nonstop. It's like, what? You're a commercial actor? He's like, I wasn't, but now I am. And it's like, yeah, because people recognize you. So you book these commercials super easily.
I don't think that a year from now we'll be like, wow, now that the strike is gone, my life has changed. I think they will be incremental and small, barely noticeable things, but I think that our lives will be
it'll ramp up
better.
And I do think there is a general relief in town, and I'm saying the town in quotes, like Hollywood across the world, the industry, where
the diaspora of Hollywood is what you mean.
Yeah. People are just afraid that like production, people don't want to get in trouble. People are just nervous. Companies don't know, have trouble planning for things when the strike is going on.
There's uncertainty.
Yeah.
And now, assuming this contract gets ratified, there will be more certainty.
Yeah. I think I'm already hearing production stuff. My wife just got called back for a show she was on for the third season. So yeah, when we had no idea if that was ever going to happen or not, but it did. So anyhow, we'll see what happens, but we promised Noah a very short intro, and now we've been talking for 15 minutes. So we will let you all go after Matt tells you about our Patreon.
Patreon.com/JustShootItPod is the place where you can go and support the show. If you get something out of the show, if you've learned a thing or two, if you find it to be a comfort in some way, throw us a buck or two. Oren, I don't know if you know this or not, but we had a little bit of a dip. A few people had to, for whatever reason, cancel their Patreon subscriptions. And so we are no longer covering our costs of production on the show. Did you know that?
I mean, I guess I didn't look at the numbers. I did know that our Patreon dipped a bit.
Is that because I'm the person who pays Noah?
Maybe. But luckily we got Mike Slane, who signed up at $15.
Shout out, Slane.
By the way, Mike got a free Blackmagic 6K Pro Cinema camera from us. So I guess he's slowly paying us back for that. $15 a month.
But so, yeah, like if you get something out of the show and you want it to keep going, we're going to keep doing it. But honestly, it is a little bit of a bummer to just be back out of pocket again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Patreon is really a truly just people wanting to support us without getting that a lot in return other than the feeling of supporting us. It's like donating to NPR, except, we have a smaller operation than NPR. So we appreciate you. Sign up, please, patreon.com/justshootitpod. Even $1 a month will put a smile on our faces.
Without further delay, let's talk to Tom Morris.
Okay, we're here with Tom Morris.
Welcome, Tom.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Tom, you and I know each other a little bit. You and Oren are pretty tight. I follow you on Instagram. It appears as though, Tom, you are on a hot streak.
That's right.
That is very impressive and very exciting. And not only that, but you have a young family and you take the whole circus with you wherever you're shooting.
That's right. Yeah. Last 2.5 years, they've been on every set, basically, minus one.
So adorable selfies in director's chairs. You've got the little Comtex around their heads. You guys are exploring all these different cities. But the root of the question is I have a basic understanding that you did some kind of out-of-the-box thinking, let's say, to really jumpstart this hot streak.
If you have a theory of how I did it, let me know. But I mean, I kind of fell into commercials on accident. And so pre-pandemic, I got kind of grouped into like a director's collective, a commercial collective. And my Monday through Friday was spent working with my writing, producing partner on the narrative side. And so Monday through Friday, I was like, oh my gosh, how do we get our next script financed? And what of our movies are ending on what platforms? And how do we get them, new distribution? And when I would get called for...
And you directed a few features, right?
Yeah. Pre-pandemic, we made like 4 in 8 years. And so that's all I thought about. I was like, let's make movies.
And when you say, you directed some of them?
I directed 3 of them, and then the 4th one was a film that I directed, second unit, produced, and my good friend Tyler McIntyre came on to direct. That's probably the biggest, most successful movie. It was called Tragedy Girls, and I basically talked the executive producers out of hiring me to direct it. I wanted to like call their bluff and have them make a movie that I wanted to make, a comedy. And they're like, no, we just like Tragedy Girls, direct the thing. And I was like, I can't do horror, make my movie. And they're like, we'll just get another director. And I was like, okay, wait a minute, keep me on. And so I was able to get my friend Tyler in there. But yeah, pre-pandemic.
So you produced it. Did you write it?
So a guy that we went to film school with named Justin Olson had written the original draft. And my old like college roommate, best friend, producing partner, he really wanted to direct the film. And so we brought Justin in, we optioned the rights, and we basically spent about 6 months developing it with my producing partner, Elliot. And then at some point, Elliot got swept up into the commercial production world, production managing for his brother. And so the script was with the production company, and they're like, well, let's keep working on it. And so, yeah, my writing partner, Jazz, and I, we kept on kind of like shaping it. And when the 2 executives got serious about saying, this is the first movie we want to make, Tom, you should direct it, I had another script that I wanted to do. And so I was like, I don't know if I should. Like, I don't even watch horror movies. I get too scared. And so, yeah, Tyler had like $150,000 movie that was making the rounds and winning festivals and getting a lot of recognition. And he had edited my first 2 films. And so it made sense for us to say, Tyler, you should meet these guys and take a look at what we have, and we'll come up with ideas and develop it. And so we spent about 6 months with Tyler developing it. him and his writing partner, Chris Hill, who are credited with writing Five Nights at Freddy's, which is currently out. They came in, took a look at what we had, started shaping the movie. We worked with them, and then ultimately I was able to convince the executives to say, hey, Tyler should do this film. And then I was able to direct second unit, got to do a lot of really cool car-to-car chases, motorcycle stuff, a lot of the stunts, a lot of the crazy people getting sucked up on chains and heads going through table saws, and all the gory things that needed 2 units and 2 cameras and fake limbs and all that. I was able to go off and shoot. But yeah, didn't direct the movie. Tyler directed that movie. It kind of launched his career and blew him up. And so he's been doing a lot of cool things. But yeah, to the commercial end, pre-pandemic,
honey baked ham commercial.
Yes, exactly. That's where I'm at now. But pre-pandemic, I was like, doing the movie thing, and it was like my producing partner had a crystal ball. December before 2020, he basically, we had a movie that we just finished that was set to come out in February of 2020. We had just finished this movie, and it was kind of like a layup for like a different, a bigger movie in the same genre. It was like a high stakes breakup film, and I had another script in the same genre that I wanted to do for like $2 million, and I was like, well, we do this micro budget version one, it goes well, then we can like say that we've done the genre and we could do it again. And he kind of had this crystal ball. He came to me in December and said, I think we shut down the business after 10 years. He's like, we made these movies and we've had a good run, but he wanted to go into farming, and his family's a family of farmers. And so he got out of Hollywood and LA right before the pandemic. And so coming into 2020, I was like, great, I got my movie coming out. I have this other script I've been shopping around. I've become pretty good friends with this finance company. That's what 2020 will be, time to make a good movie type of thing. And then, like everybody, pandemic hit, everything just shut down. Obviously, indie film became extremely hard to put together. And so I started to lean very heavily on my commercial rep. And I was like, hey, what can we get going? What can we do? And like everybody, they were trying to take swings and figure out remote production and get stuff going. And ultimately, I don't think anybody did stuff in the first couple of months, so there's no fault there. About 8 months into the pandemic, they're like, we got to let you go. It's time to cut you loose. And I was like, man, okay. And so pre-pandemic, I would get shortlisted every month, it seemed like, and I'd be doing 1 or 2 treatments, and I was getting about 8 a year. And, my expenses were very low. I was a single man living with my producing partner in Studio City in a basement. And
sure. So 8 jobs a year, no problem.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, exactly. Coming in. Yeah, exactly. Like if I was making between 80 and 90K, it was like, oh gosh, I was taking the intern for sushi, $200, didn't care.
And you were also making money on your indie films.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing is that the first 2, I was dumb enough to say, I don't want a salary. Let me just own the thing. And so the first movie, it did fine. We made it about $500,000. It came out. It got a theatrical release with Warner Brothers. Money came in. We got to give some money to the investors. And then it kind of just like flatlined, like right at the number that we needed to start experiencing the waterfall, like this like 75-25 split. We basically got to that number and it just kind of like went stagnant. And so then the second movie kind of had like a nice little pop out of the beginning. We were able to give money to the investors, pay them back, get like a little bit.
Same
and then
budget
again,
as the first one?
No, the first movie we did for about 500,000, 483. And then that movie did fine. And we were like, well, wait a minute. If we can make a movie for like 50,000 and it does the same business, we're going to be awesome.
That's a business plan then. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we set out to make the second movie for about 50, and we ended up coming in about 85,000. But that movie, it did what it did. It got on Hulu. It had like a nice little pop right out of the beginning. We were able to pay the investors and it made money. And then, 7 years went by and like, you just kind of forget about it. And so when 2020 hit and any commercial prospects I had dried up, and the films that I had been working on, kind of like everybody were like, how do you make an indie film with COVID going on? That second movie found its legs on AVOD. Tubi really became a platform where I don't know if we just hit in the algorithm right, but I remember that first quarter being like, what am I going to do with myself? I have no transferable skills. I actually applied to a Pizza Hut store in downtown LA, like as an essential worker. Like I'll come make pizzas and deliver pizzas. And I do have a tie to Pizza Hut on the commercial side, but I was like, I know a lot about the pizzas. I should get a job at the store.
Whoa, wait.
And
You're like, well, I've directed a Pizza Hut commercial, so maybe I could make some pizzas for you?
Yeah, well, at that time, yeah, exactly. My sister's at Pizza Hut, at the shooting store as like the head of production. So since like 2014, she's been on every photo shoot, TV commercial, integration, all the stuff.
Gotcha.
Through my years, I've made pizzas and hand selected pepperonis and found cheese and have been involved in like every aspect of it. So yeah, pandemic hit and I thought, great, I can get a job at Pizza Hut. Like I know the pizzas. And they never called me back. They never even called me back. And so I was like, what?
No experience in retail.
Yeah. And so I thought, what am I to do? And so then quarter one, my distributor hits me up and he's like, hey, I noticed that your bank account was inactive because my producing partner and I, at the end of 2019, we shut down our business.
Sure.
I opened up my own entity to be like a sole director. And then he's like, yeah, your bank account's inactive.
What do you mean?
I am an LLC, but we had a company called Pelican House Productions that used to hold the copyright to all of our movies, had a bank account with Wells Fargo. And so if there were royalties, it would be direct deposited there. And, royalties had slowed down. We officially shut down that entity in 2019. 2020, I set up my own loan out because the commercial company I was with was like, AB5, you have to now have your own entity so we can pay you as like a consulting, creative or whatever.
AB5 was a law that passed in California that basically said you can't pay contractors without giving them health insurance and all these benefits.
Right. Basically,
so you have to turn into a vendor instead
of a gig worker. The gig worker protections plan, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I set up a new entity, and the distributor I didn't think to give them that bank account and that stuff. And so I very quickly transferred the copyright to all the titles to my new entity. And then he's like, I think the first check at the beginning of the pandemic was like $12,000. And I was like, whoa, after 7 years. And at that point, I basically owned the movie outright, with accounting and taxes and whatever the investors had said, hey, we're good. Like, we made some money. And it's when you have high net worth dealing with K1s and tax returns and write-offs, it became more beneficial just to say, we're out. We've had a nice run for the last 5 years. We're done. And so there I was owning this movie.
This is the $50,000 movie, or the $85,000.
The $84,000 movie. Yeah, that started at 50, became 84, and so then 2020, I just kept getting checks every quarter, and I was like, wow, okay. But yes, so to get to it, my reps dropped me in 2020. I had no idea what I was doing. I ended up becoming like a COVID officer on all that Pizza Hut stuff because they went into beast mode. And basically did back-to-back
ordering pizzas
because literally
or making
ordering pizzas. Yeah.
Yes. Well, yes, exactly. They, like everybody, nobody shot the first half of the year. And so once the regulations became in place, they created a bubble at their studio and they're like, now's the time to redo the website. And when they redo the website, you got to get a picture of every ingredient. If someone's going to go in there and do a custom builder, it's like, you got to have every pepperoni and you got to have cheese. And so, and then, different things just started slotting in. But yeah, we went every day from like the round July until December 19th with only Thanksgiving off. And so every day of my life, I was COVID officer guy. And I started just thinking like, I'm never going to direct again. Like it's done, my nice run and these movies and all the stuff. And so at the start of 2021, I was about to have twins. My wife and I she was pregnant, but we were about to have these twins. And I was like, I can't be doing COVID every day. Like one, that's the best chance to get COVID is trying to test people for COVID. Sure. And two, it's long hours for not the director rate, And so I essentially went to my Rolodex, everybody that I had ever worked with and that I knew. And I said, hey, look, I'm I'm out on the street freelancing as a commercial director. I've been set free about a year ago, and I'm ready to take on anything. It doesn't matter the budget. Like, I'm ready to go. And
Did you
so,
send a reel with that?
yeah,
email?
I would send stuff, and a lot of people were aware of my stuff and always very polite about it. And so what I ended up doing, like the week
Wait.
before the twins showed up and my wife was on set.
Can I ask, when you were hitting those people up, because we've all been in that situation,
Yep.
right? And the anxiety that I always have is like that, there's the saying work begets work, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And the inverse is true as well, right? Like when you're looking for work, it feels like you're devaluing yourself a little bit. You're making yourself look needy, sweaty, and therefore people kind of maybe subconsciously make some assumptions about, well, why isn't he in demand, right? Was there anything you did to combat that? Did you have any tactics, or were you just like, here we go, we're just gonna do it, and that's that?
Yeah. So exactly to your point, there were a couple people, again, my entrance into commercials, I didn't know what I was stumbling into. I was doing these movies, and then I got asked to pitch on a music video, and that was the first time someone paid me to direct something, and it got like 100 million views in the first month. And so
a Lindsey Sterling music video, the
it's a Lindsey Sterling video. It's the lady that plays violin and dubsteps, and I did this Western duel, and she had a big following, and I think we just had the right combination of like interesting storytelling, some different camera stuff she hadn't done, but it just kind of popped. And so at the time, she was with Maker Studios, which was Disney's entrance into new media and all that. And so they had other influencers that they were like, great, we want that same guy to do the AT&T comedy football. And so I didn't really understand, but I was essentially exclusive with this production company. I was like an exclusive commercial director, even though they didn't have a roster. We were under a collective umbrella. And so over the years, people would basically reach out to me and say, hey, can you come direct for my company? Or would you direct for this, agency or whatever? And I would kind of defer to my executive producer as to say, hey, do you want to like take the lead and negotiate this or whatever? And so some of the times, if it was a bigger company, they may reach out to the executive producer, and I would be on a loan outright, and they might give a fee so I could go do it. Or other times it would just kind of like magically disappear, and I would say, oh, like what happened there? And so when I went freelance, I was able to go to those people and say, hey, look, you solicited me for work before, and I was in this exclusive agreement that wasn't beneficial to both parties. But now I'm single and ready to mingle. Like, let's see what we could do. And then on the like complete cold outreach, into the pandemic, again, like I didn't have a lot of money coming in at the time. I did have some of those royalties from the movie Oliver Stone, but I took a little bit of cash and I shot some spec commercials. And so that became my way in, was to say, hey, just to be on your radar, here's a couple new things I've shot. I'm freelancing around. If you have anything coming through, I've been doing stuff with smaller, nimble productions. And so,
you reframed it. Oh, so that's interesting. That's two things, right? So it's not just like, you're not just like, hey, do you guys have anything? You're like, hey, here's something new, right? Because you self-generated. But then also the thing of smaller, nimble productions. That's a value proposition, right? You're saying, hey, think of me for this type of job and look at what I can do with it, right? And there's plenty of people out there who have, budgets that are smaller than you would like, maybe, but like, if the work is good and if you can make something cool at $50,000, $100,000, whatever the number is, and it's all relative. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could be $5,000, it could be $100. Who cares, right? Like, if you can pull something off that's cool and you're making your living, it doesn't really matter. And I think sometimes positioning yourself in a positive light with that sort of mentality, I think, can be really smart.
Yeah. And so that was exactly what kicked it off for me in 2021, just doing the whole, sharing the new work that I had, and then getting a couple nibbles. And like you said, it's like, one company may have booked me on something, and then all of a sudden that's going to become a new thing. And some of them had either, maybe higher production value than some of my previous work or whatever it may have been. And so I was able to just, generate some new stuff and, things happen. Like, I think the thing when I was starting my career, everything had to be so immediate of like the present. And the thing you realize is that everybody you're meeting is like kind of growing along the way. And so, there was an executive producer who used to be with the company Media Monks and would get me hired on the Media Monks jobs every now and again. And so we started talking and he's like, I want to get you back in with the Monks and have you do some work now that you're freelance. And he got me on one thing, but then very quickly went to another production company. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden that became a new door that was open because that new production company had new clients, new field of work. And so that was one of the better jobs. I think there's a stigma of being freelance of there's like a budget threshold. Like if the budgets get big, why not go to one of the like very well-known houses and big roster directors? And I was like, I would battle that too of like, oh, should I jump back on a roster or should I be trying? But I think at the time of 2020 and 2021, when like not a lot of people were working, you were seeing these massive TV directors and film directors taking $500,000, $400,000 commercials,
which we're still kind of living in, frankly, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
Thanks to the strike, right. Yeah.
And so, I mean, to get into this year, like 2021 and 2022, I managed to build some momentum, but that was one of the first ones that Oren and I joke about. But at the end of 2021, a good, an executive producer that I had known ended up at this new production company. And he's like, hey, do you want to do some comedy car stuff? I got this Chevy job. It's like $250. And I was like, yeah. He's like, 1 day shoot. And I was like, cool. I got to make a treatment. Who are the companies? He's like, no, it's yours if you want it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
It's yours if you want it. Oh man.
Yeah.
Tattoo it across my chest, across my forehead. I'll take it. Whatever.
But what's crazy is, Matt, you and I, all the jobs we got used to be like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like all the College Humor, Funny or Die days. It's like, oh yeah, you can direct. Let's do it.
Yeah, I know. And so, and it's weird too, because I feel, I'm sure you guys feel the same way of like, you can look at your body of work and absolutely hate it and be like, I suck at this job. Like I have nothing that is of value to anyone. And, I've had so many times where people look at my stuff and like, you're a comedy director and there's nothing funny in here. And especially with my movies, I've put out so many, well, not so many movies, but my 3 features and several shorts and things where people are like, that was supposed to be funny. And I'm like, it is funny, right? And people think not. And so every now and again, somebody stumbles across my website and they're like, I can see the quirkiness. I can see the personality and I can see a through line and then I'll just get hired. And so that's become like a big battle too of, do you put 5 things on your website and hope that leaves enough mystique that someone wants to dig deeper? And I've had like a lot of jobs over the last 3 years pop up where people are like, oh, wow, he's got a lot of work. Let's just book him. Let's just do it. Because if these people trusted him, we can trust him. And the bigger the brands on my website get, the easier it is for bigger brands to then trust me. But yeah, this year was certainly pretty slow going. I had a couple of the things from 2022 finished that I was really excited about and wanted to get them out in front of people. And so when 2022 began, it was crickets, and I was back to it. Yeah. 2023. Yep. When 2023 began, it was back to crickets of like, I sat down with my wife and we had just had our 3rd kid. We had twins and then it was about a year and a half later and surprise, we're having a baby. And so, I was like, do I drive Uber? Like what transferable skills do I have? I can't get directing work anywhere. There was a writer's strike looming.
Isn't it just so crazy, listeners, to hear like, oh, I made, 4 features. One of them,
sure,
was huge.
Getting offered spots left and right, like a nice network of people who are willing to hire you and introduce you to other people. And then
rejected from Pizza Hut, COVID CCO officer.
Yeah.
And then getting big commercials. And then do I have to drive Uber?
Sure.
That is basically like the life of a director in America.
Yeah. Yeah, and so there I was, and again, it was like, man, what am I going to do, and how do you maintain it? And so, and I was doing the same thing. I was like, okay, well, I have the tech. I can start sending emails, and I can send 20 a day or 100 a week or whatever. And
this is this year we're talking about.
This was this year.
This is the question Matt asked you 22 minutes ago.
Yeah.
This is the first question. How did I get on this hot streak?
This is the answer is coming.
This is the answer, which is, hey, listen, context is important, but
you got
also
the backstory.
To remind people, though, to Oren's point, it's like highs and lows, but we're talking only about 11 months ago you implement this new plan.
Right? Yeah, well,
this is like 6 months ago, right?
So basically from the beginning of the year in January until July, I couldn't get anything.
Gotcha.
I pitched a few things and I lost them. And then, I was being scrappy. I started the year by building the world's largest pizza for Pizza Hut.
Ooh, congratulations. How'd it taste?
That was Mr. Beast, right?
No, another very similar YouTuber. Gosh, I should know his name, right? Gosh.
For you.
Yeah.
Are you sure it's not Mr. Beast? I saw Mr. Beast.
No, he did like a pizza slice or something.
Oh, he did a slice. Okay. It's
gosh.
embarrassing that we know that. That's
Eric.
Yeah. I should know Eric. He was there. Eric was there, and they were filming the whole time. And
14,000 square foot pizza.
Yeah, we were on our hands and knees, hand rolling this dough, and we came in to save the day and build this pizza. But that's where my year started. 14 or 17 hours on my knees with no knee pads on a concrete air-conditioned floor, pressing dough into the ground, thinking, what am I doing? How am I going to...
Sure. Right, the floor is air-conditioned to keep it cold?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a very complicated process, but yeah, they had to build these 14-foot walls and air condition the floor to have the food safety guy
go rancid, right?
But then you had to heat it, and so it was very counterproductive. As the dough's being laid out, it has to be chilled, but then when the Zamboni heater comes through, it had to heat it.
Oh, interesting. I was curious about how they cooked it. A Zamboni heater, basically, like a heat gun.
It's on top of the pizza?
Yeah.
It was like if you've been to Home Depot and you've got the flat cart,
Mm-hmm.
and then you took maybe 12 heat lamps and drilled those into 2x4s and then ratchet strapped that to the heat cart.
That does not sound safe. That's that's not going to work.
There were things about that day that, at some points, food safety is like, you can walk on the pizza and seal the edges instead of doing it with your knuckles. And we're like walking on the pizza, and then food safety is like,
feet?
Yeah, with your feet. Yes.
Or with shoes.
Oh, no, with shoes. Yeah. You were walking with shoes. And part of this whole spectacle for Eric was that, he sold VIP tickets to his millions of subscribers. So you'd have these 12-year-old, 15-year-old kids that would show up just to get a selfie of them walking on the pizza.
Sure.
Anyway.
That's worthwhile, actually. I get that.
But
Imagine
I thought you were going to say, he sold slices of this pizza.
Yeah.
They did throw the world's largest pizza party, which they did not get the world record for. And then after the pizza was made, I didn't stay for the distribution, but all the pizza has to be distributed. So it had to get sliced up and put in boxes and put on semis and distributed. And I can't speak to if anyone ate it or not.
No one ate it.
They attempted to get it out there. But that's where the year...
You wasted the world's largest pizza, Tom. That's on your conscience.
Yeah. And so that's where the year started for me of like, what do I do? And so, again, I was like, how do I get some stuff going? And basically I was able to look at some spots of mine from previous years that were extremely popular that I did not like. And
give us for instance.
So one of the spots, one of the things I was always very well known for when I was on the first collective, it was a company called Whitelist. I was like the jump on a grenade guy. And so if a project was coming in fast that had no money and needed to shoot in like 3 days,
Tom's a level head. He'll get it done. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. So I did a Campbell soup commercial in Dallas with Dak Prescott that was like, book it on a Tuesday, shoot it on a Thursday type of job. And, we go down to Dallas to shoot this big commercial. It's supposed to be day exterior. Dak's running drills on the field. He's like doing stuff, throwing passes, eating soup. It was very fun. They played a game the night before. Dak's a very physical quarterback. He gets a little beat up. They win. He shows up at the outdoor commercial shoot. And he's like, yeah, I'm not doing this. It's 100 degrees in September in Dallas. I'm not filming a commercial outside. And so we're like, let's move inside. And so you move inside. We don't really have lights to be inside. We had all day exterior stuff. And he's like, I don't want to run drills. And you're like, Dak doesn't want to run drills. Let's, we now have 40 minutes to shoot a commercial. And so you do it and it goes fine. And the agency cut was extremely rough, but they ran it everywhere. Every football game, this commercial's on 3 times. And I'm like so embarrassed because I'm like, it's so bad. And I really, I kicked myself because that was like 2017 or 18. And, they spent money and I got paid for it. But like at some point, the money doesn't matter as much if it sucks, if like it could have been better. And so, at the start of this year, I was like thinking about that footage and I was like, I have it. Why don't I reopen it? And, I recut the thing and found some music to go to it. And I made it from a 30 down to a 15 and only kept like the best stuff, I guess. And it got 10% better. I don't think it got 100% better or anything like that. But all of a sudden it became a new thing that people that I was reaching out to hadn't seen. And so I had that to start sending around. The one commercial I did at the end of last year, the Chevy job with George Lopez, they had put their cut out. And again, I was like, I know the DIT. I bet that footage is sitting on his RAID. Let me drive down there and get it and recut this thing. And like, even though I'm not making money, let me pay for sound and color and make it 10% better than the agency cut. And so now I had 2 things with celebrities in them that were new all of a sudden. And so that was something I started kind of kicking out in the spring, those 2 spots. And then, it was like the 4th of July and I'm like, I'm not going to be doing anything. And all of a sudden, all the 6 months before of sending emails and, when people decided to start spending money again, it was just like, I jumped on a job in Atlanta. Well, it first started with a mutual friend, I think, of all of us at Sawhorse. They came to me at the end of last year and invited me to like write some scripts to pitch a client. And we wrote these scripts and I was like, we're probably never going to hear about that. And then they popped up like the last week of June and they're like, we want to do it. And I was like, wow, okay. And so that was my first one of the year that was just like, good job, good rate, smooth shoot. It was very nice. Oren and I joke about it. I'm sure you guys have experiences. If you feel like right now, everybody wants to shoot 50 things. It's not just 130 or 115. It's like the 30, the 15, the vertical, the horizontal, the circle, photo shoot, social media stuff on the phone, interview questions on the side. But this client was like, no, we just want the 30. We just want you to shoot the 30. We're going to build all the sets and just go do it.
Beautiful.
And so, that kind of kicked it off for me at the end of June. And then 4th of July, historically, I never worked July, August. I don't know if you guys have felt that people do like agency summers or slow down.
Yeah.
Matt always has a theory. Anytime I complain about not having a job, Matt will be like, well, look at this time last year.
And I'm right. And I always say it's relevant. Like 4th of July and the beginning of the year, basically. Like January, February, because...
Yeah, but what about November, December?
Well,
after Thanksgiving.
We're all working because they're trying to spend their budgets down, basically. They're all trying to hit their fiscal year, right? So they have to spend that money. So maybe you get something that like hits the books in December, but you technically shoot in January and they kind of get a little creative. But that like January, February tend to be really slow because they're planning what they're going to be shooting for the rest of the year. And then they try to get it to finish right around summer vacation. And then they start over again.
Yeah, there it is. There's the science. And so, but so I was coming into the July and I was like, this is going to be brutal. Like I never work July. I never work August. Like I did the one job. I'm excited about it. I did all that heavy lifting with the, recutting stuff and paying for sound and color. And then it just, I got asked about this honey baked ham commercial. And again, it was a funny one because as the script was coming in, it was BBDO Atlanta. And I, early on after that Western music video, I did like a Friday Night Light parody, slow motion, guy running to the end zone. Oh my gosh, he's going to, score the touchdown, but he accidentally pulls out his cell phone and sends a text. And so they wanted to do something like that. They're like, oh my gosh, we want to like draw parallels to how Ham has always been involved with football by doing this like spoof spot. Tom has that. He's got the spoof spot. We should just book him. And of course we start going down that road and then they're like, yeah, but that's not really food centric. And so, they booked me on this thing, and then the scripts were changing, and, halfway into it, I had to rewrite a treatment, but I ended up maintaining the job. But that job was going, and I was like, okay, great. Here's a job for the end of July. That's awesome. And then one of the other things I had been known for was like monochrome. Mm-hmm. I did a job for Panera Bread early on that was just like, let's paint everything green. And slowly but surely, 2014 on, people were like, can you do red for State Farm? Can you do pink for MTV? Can you do yellow? And then I would just respond with, if Home Depot's got the paint, we could do it. And so,
and that's
every
how
year.
I met Tom. I met Tom on his yellow project.
Yeah, Oren met me in my yellow phase.
I thought you were going to say you met him at Home Depot. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, we were both buying paint. Well, so that became the thing. Is like every year, without fail, I always get asked for one. And I'm like, well, you got to do it. Who cares? Like, you got to go shoot the thing. And so that was the same thing. Oren had helped me do some visual effects and some title work on a yellow monochrome at the end of 2022. And so Temptations Cat Food was like, we need to do a yellow monochrome miniature set for cats. This guy's the color guy. And so it was all of a sudden.
Just the one interesting thing I want to say about the yellow job, which I might have talked about on the podcast before, is I don't know what convinced you to do this or why you did this, but I think you were like, oh, I heard you were a director too. We should go grab lunch.
Yeah. I love people. Yeah. I mean,
but I feel like a lot of I bet Matt's never done that. Like, have you ever worked on a job and one of your crew members is a director and you're like, hey, let's go grab lunch and talk about directing?
Not since I've had a podcast, but that's because, if you talk to a new director a week for 7 years, 8 years.
Yeah, it's 8 years. Stop.
Is it 8 years?
At least, yeah. 2015.
Okay. 8 years. Then maybe the appetite isn't there quite the same way, but so yeah. No. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I did it. I mean, Oren, we did meet that way, but I do it with, camera assistants and all different people, and, love meeting crew and talking about it. It's like Oren always says, like, he's obsessed with it. And we shared that struggle on a job that we were both kind of pitching at the same time. And we're like, oh my gosh, like, it's so taxing, but it's like, you're obsessed, it's like, I don't want another email at 2 a.m, but then you're like, but I kind of want to respond right now. Or we would be texting each other at 6 a.m. I'm like, what are you doing awake? Why are you up? But, so we had met on this yellow job. And so it just happened. It's without fail every year. Somebody hits me up to be like, you could do another colored set thing. And I'm like, sure. And so I'm on my way to Atlanta to do the ham. And then this Temptations job with Amazon was like, can you do yellow sets in New York next week? And you're like, yes, I can. And so it just started, all the emails, all the like due diligence and all the digging and door knocking that had started the year that was seeming to turn up nothing once the first type of the iceberg hits. And so, it just became this like, okay, we're going to Atlanta, then we're jumping up to New York. But then that one thing I booked to shoot in LA still wants to go. So let's put it in the middle. And I have the thing that's going to shoot in Chicago for a month, 2 jobs back to back in September. But then a thing popped up for, New York City. And part of it's just like, hey, this thing's moving fast. Do you want to be on it? And it's like, I don't have time to write a treatment. And they're like, well, we'll just book you. And you're like, okay, well then, if
sure,
the money's green and
you can make it work. Yeah.
The job is mine. Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah. And so, I've definitely been in the mentality of like every job I've been on, I'm like, this is for sure the last one. And so I was doing these 2 jobs in Chicago recently, and we had finished the first one, and I was like doing a little bit of rap because that was a job that I also helped produce. I produced it. And so I was doing a little bit of the wrap out and the paperwork while the prep for the second one was beginning. And again, a friend of mine who's been very good to me reached out and said, hey, I got this job in Santa Barbara. It shoots in like 2 weeks, and it's yours if you want it. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then she asked me, she's like, great, can you come tech scout tomorrow? And I was like, well, shoot, I'm in Chicago prepping. I got to shoot tomorrow. And so we were able to push the shoot one day. I put my kids to bed in Chicago, flew to LAX, drove up to Santa Barbara, did the tech scout for 2 hours, drove back to the airport, flew to Chicago.
For
and
non-LA natives, that's like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive probably from LAX to Santa Barbara.
Yeah. Did you even need to be at that TechScout?
I mean, I guess now I could talk about it, but it was like a secret Google event, and the Secret Service would be there because the guests were like Oprah and George Bush, and there was a lot of security clearance.
So when you say Santa Barbara, you mean Montecito?
Yes, I mean the very nice, expensive neighborhood south.
Yeah.
And so that job, I was like, great, yeah, it's a cool one. Like, happy to do it. This will be the last one of the year, probably. Like, I don't know. And then somewhere in flying after Chicago really wrapped, flying back to get ready to go do that job is when this thing I just did popped up, and they're like, hey, we got these rough concepts and we need somebody who can like shape them a little bit and direct it and then help with post. And I was like, I got to write treatment? And they're like, no. Like, we saw your work. Like, it's yours if you want it. And I'm like, let's do it. And that project actually had Tiffany Haddish attached, and Oren knows how excited I was.
I was like, this is going to make you real. If you have a spot with Tiffany Haddish,
yeah,
it's like a different, it changes your reel, I think.
Yeah, it was like my comedy centerpiece. So then there I was like, oh my gosh, look at this, 2024. Wow, this will be a great one to have. 2 days before the shoot, Tiffany dropped out. Maybe she was never involved. That was beyond me. And so then I got pretty excited about the backup. We had done a normal callback session and everything, and this young woman, Lola, she wasn't Tiffany Haddish, but she had energy and sass and was funny. And I was like, you know what? She's going to do a great job. It's not going to be the star spot, but it can make the reel if it's funny. And then like a day and a half before, I was with Oren, and they're like, we've got hip hop sensation Sway Lee. And I was like, well, this is a different commercial all of a sudden.
You said, of course.
I mean, I was still doing it. I was like, well, yeah, you got to get through the shoot and make it happen. And he was very pleasant. He was great to work with. We had to lean into like, a little bit more hip hop music video style, and which is fine. I kind of had it a lot more like deadpan, lock off, quirky comedy with Tiffany talking straight to the lens. But anyway, that spot is finished. But
there's this weird thing in commercial filmmaking where you're so excited about an element of the commercial, like, oh, I'm going to shoot this spot with Tiffany Haddish, and then the producer will contact you and be like, hey, so Tiffany's not in anymore, but great news. Now we can have a little bit more money for this camera thing. And you're like, and a normal human being would be like, what? The only reason I'm doing this is for Tiffany. But then a commercial director will be like, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So excited. Like, you just have to pretend to like every single thing.
Right. Tell you. You're saying you can't complain in commercials. Yeah. What you're saying.
Like, I did that with Conscious Minds, this Panera spot, and was going to be SAG, and we were going to try to get like an Aubrey Plaza or Kamel Nanjiani something. And then someone somewhere at the company was like, oh, what if we get like a contestant from The Bachelor?
Right.
And I was like,
you're like, great, I love The Bachelor. And
no,
I'm familiar with this person.
Don't do that. And then I get a call from our buddy, Matt. Like the next day, he's like, Oren, great news. I'm like, what's the great news? Do we have Aubrey Plaza? It's like, no, we don't have to go SAG anymore because we're using a contestant from The Bachelor, which means you get 2 more extras. I'm like,
great.
Hard pitch.
Great. Yeah.
Great.
Anyhow.
Well, yeah.
The guy I had was very nice.
Yeah.
But, he's not a comedic actor.
Yeah, no, I know. And I think I lost that job to you. I think I, at one point, was asked about Panera. No, that's the fun of it. I mean, you never feel bad. I never feel bad losing a job if you find out the director who got it has a great reel and is qualified and all the stuff. Sometimes you see reels and you're like, wait, how'd they connect the dots there? How'd they get it?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you, Tom, and I've said that many times on the podcast. It's a lot easier to say when everyone's working.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like,
oh, sure.
When it's like dry for everyone in 2024, we're all going to be saying that a bunch.
That's right. Yeah, I know. It's been very.
The world is really turning around. It's really looking rosy, man. Good point.
I'm just saying maybe the strike will be over.
I would say for anyone at the moment of recording, the SAG strike is not looking hot. They had their final. The studios presented their best and final offer, and I don't think SAG agreed to it. I don't know the insights of that, but I'm hopeful.
By the time this episode comes out, I feel like there's a 70% chance.
Yeah.
You think so? Oh, all right, good. So we're recording on a Monday. You think by
November
this Thursday?
6th.
Yeah.
No.
Think?
The Ira episode comes out.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so we've got you're saying a week and a half, basically.
We got 10 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
11 days.
Maybe.
Yeah. I've been doing this thing that's really bad. When I lose a job, I look up the directors on Instagram, and then, usually you don't post. You have to be like kind of cryptic about posting from set because you don't know what you're allowed to post or not.
Right.
So a lot of people just post stories. They're not going to post like Instagram posts, but they'll be like, look at this fun thing I'm doing with the camera assistant or whatever. And so I wouldn't say, I don't know if stalking is the right word, but I follow.
It sounds like pretty textbook.
I follow the directors that I lose jobs to see if they're posting from set, and secretly hope that it doesn't look very fun.
Yeah, that's definitely stalking. Yeah, it always looks fun for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a pretty big nerd about this stuff, and so if I see like a lens case, I'm like, yeah, that looks cool. Just even the closed case, it doesn't have to be open.
Lenses?
Yeah.
Oh man, there's more than one in there. That's cool.
I can see an insert slate and be like, dang, dude, they must be shooting some inserts today. This is cool.
Ooh, probe lens.
Yo, they got two types of slates on that set.
Yes. Gosh.
Well, so what's crazy is you've done what, like 12 jobs this year or something?
With the one I'm currently on, which I guess at the time you're saying this will air, I could say that it's coming out. I'm on an Arby's commercial right now, and it's number 14. It's number 14,
and like 13 of them were like
within the last 6 months,
July,
the second half of the year.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a majority of them have not been LA. I think there's been 3 of them that have been LA, and then the bulk of them have been like Atlanta, New York, Chicago, and Santa Barbara, I guess, is a different city.
And we brought it up a little bit, but I do want to dig in just a touch. You've got, like I said, a young family.
Yeah.
3 kids. What are their ages?
My twin daughters are 2.5, and then my son is about to be 1 year old. So he's 11 months.
Yeah. And you're taking them with you to Atlanta and Chicago and all of these things. And your wife. Yeah.
Yep.
I do like the idea of it's just you and 2 toddlers and a baby. You're just like rolling up. First of all, awesome. Very cool. Kind of what I had always thought I would do with kids. And I have not traveled with her once.
It's not easy. I still don't really, they don't quite get it.
Oren's like, no, this is your only chance to sleep. What are you doing? But so walk us through it a little bit on a, first on a, like, why do you do that? And then also, what are the things that are maybe a little easier than you thought, and then maybe a little harder than you thought?
Yeah. Well, so I think it's funny because I think when it initially started, the first travel job with the kids first showed up on set. Actually, I magically decided to start shooting a short film the Friday that the pandemic was officially announced. And so in 2020, I was like, I got to shoot this short film. Now's my moment. I don't know why. And so while I was prepping the movie up in Central California, the president went on the air and is like, national emergency, COVID's here. And so that job essentially, I was like, let's take a vote. If everyone feels unsafe, we're going home. We'll just pick this up in 2 months when COVID's over. Sure. How naive. And so finally, by the time my kids were born, about a year and a half later after that date, had done some commercials and money was coming in. And so the girls maybe were like 3 or 4 months, and we were finishing that short film, and they came out and like, they just had a blast. They had such a good time.
The 3-month-olds were having an amazing time. They could see maybe 10 inches in front of their face.
Yes, exactly. They had no idea what was going on, but they had such a blast. And so I was like, all right, well, that was cool. Yeah, so they worked on the short film. They probably had no idea what was going on, but like they were seemingly having a blast.
Wait, are they in the short film?
No, and they're not in it at all.
They're just behind the scenes.
Yeah, and it was a short film that took place in it was like a screamo band music movie that nobody cared to watch. And so we were shooting in like a bar.
Watched it, I think.
You did watch it, yeah. You said "rockin' good time," which I appreciated.
I like that about you, Tom. If Oren said a rockin' good time to me, I wouldn't be so gracious.
Yeah, I was like, dang, dude, that's cool.
There's no way I said a rockin' good time.
If you go to vimeo.com/Tom Morris and click on Wild Man, you can see the first and only comment. from Oren. It might say that, it might not. But they came on the movie, had a great time. And so then I did a couple other like LA jobs, and they would always visit during lunch and like stay a little bit into the second half, and, you know, had an interest in it. And then you'd come home and they'd be like picking up my camera off the desk and dropping it on the ground. And, you know, again, they're like 6-7 months, like just knocking stuff over, but playing with the cameras and being very curious. And so one of the first jobs that year that popped up was actually in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so I was like, I'm from Youngstown, Ohio. It's 45 minutes away. My parents hadn't yet really got to spend time with the kids. None of my extended family met them. And we're like, oh, we're going to do this job in Pittsburgh, and they're going to give me a travel budget. I don't need to book a first class seat or whatever. You know, if I got like $1,200 for travel. Oh, that's the thing too, is kids are free until 2. And so with that first job, they gave me a travel budget, and I'm like, oh, I could just use this amount to buy my ticket and my wife's ticket and sit in the back of the plane. And then the kids are free. And then they'll get to spend time with grandma and grandpa and, you know, meet the in-laws and all the other people. And so it was very natural to be like, they're going on that one. And so they went on that one, and then, you know, had a great time, all this stuff. And then I believe the next one that was a travel job was in Nashville, Tennessee. And so my wife's best friend lives not far from there. And again, pandemic had been going on. They hadn't met our baby. We spent very little time with their kid. And so we're like, I mean, if they're going to give me a big hotel room in a minivan, like, why not take the kids there? And so there it was. 2 months later, we're in Nashville, and the kids are gone.
I think the difference is like Matt and my wives would not be like, yeah, we're going to just stop whatever our life is for your schedule and take the kids and pack everything and do this and go.
Sure.
Like, right.
Yeah.
I mean, unless, but if I was shooting in Cleveland, my wife would absolutely come, you know?
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Oh, I was going to say, just to hit that real quick, was the job I did in Pittsburgh. Oren's wife, your wife she booked a job in Pittsburgh as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, my kid has to be entertained. And I was like, dude, I just wrapped. I could
New York.
Yeah, I was like, I could drive back down to Pittsburgh. And then we were actually driving to Chicago. But anyway, Matt, you were about to ask.
Well, I think, like, you know, your story makes a ton of sense to me, because I think my wife probably would, and your wife would, go see their parents with a free plane ticket and a free hotel room for sure. And that kind of like eases you into what's smart and easy about this, right? Because I think selfishly, the reason I asked the question is, like, I used to travel with my wife all the time,
right,
on these jobs, right? You get a free hotel room, you downgrade your ticket, it's no big deal. And have been...
Matt took his wife to Russia.
I did take my wife to Russia, and it was awesome. It was so fun.
There you go.
And she did uproot her life for it. But, you know, like, that's one of the perks.
Of those fuzzy hats.
She did buy a big jacket, like a big long jacket. Anyway, but like, that's a perk of being a director, is that you get to see the world.
Flash forward to me last month saying to my wife, hey, come to Toronto with me. And she's like, no.
Yeah, sure.
It's too complicated.
It's different. Also, I think when your kids are a little bit older, they're a little more grounded. They're missing things. They're missing their friends, all of that stuff.
Yeah, and so I think that that's the thing that really hit for us, because the first couple were convenience. It's like, oh, it's easy, and like it's extended family time, and, you know, I'm able to stay in Youngstown and drive down there, and any of the hotel money I could just, you know, give them per diem to go to the zoo and do fun stuff. But like this year, I think it kicked off when we were set to go to Atlanta. That was going to be a 2-day shoot plus some casting, and that was going to be a 9 or 8 day trip straight into the New York job being directly after. And so I'm like, I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks. It's over my wife's birthday. I have the space. I also travel with my DP, you know, and so a lot of times I just negotiate like, hey, I'm bringing my DP, give us an Airbnb. And so, you know, in Atlanta, it's Atlanta. It's very sprawling, and there's big houses. It's not as difficult as New York became the next week. But, you know, we had a massive house in Atlanta, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. It's so easy to bring the kids. And then it's like, oh, we're just going to jump up to New York. And like, at this point, it had been the kids' second time. And, you know, again, like the girls became obsessed with the Statue of Liberty somehow. And knowing that dad was going to New York where the statue resides, like, how could I not take them? And so, yeah, they had to go. And that became, you know, the first day we were in New York after all 3 hours of flying and carrying all these 15 bags that we take with us, we had to get on the Staten Island ferry and take a trek past the Statue of Liberty. And
so I can see how great it would be, when you're in prep, but it's a little soft. And I can see how great it would be after you've wrapped. Maybe you stay an extra day or two, hang out. But while you're in it, right? While it's like, sorry, honey, I have client drinks, or you have to just hang out. There's a lot of hanging out with the crew and with the agency and all of that stuff. So I assume you're not seeing your family for like a few of the shoot day, the PPM. There's like a good 3 or 4 days in there where you're just like not in your hotel room at all. And your wife is just kind of like in a new city with your kids.
Yeah.
Is that hard? A, and then B, talk about a leading question. And then B, like, is it restful for you? Which is, I think I was teasing Oren about, like, oh, this is our only chance to get any sleep. But it's kind of real, right?
Well, yeah, but also I feel like I'm so busy on, like, my last, like, 4 or 5 travel jobs. I didn't even see the city I went to because I was just...
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're lucky if you get, like, an afternoon after PPM, but before the shoot. If things go really smoothly, that was always my, like, sightseeing afternoon.
Yeah, well, so they end up coming to set, whether if it's a production company I worked with, they're kind of like, oh, I get it. It's easy when it's in LA. Like our friends at Sawhorse, I've done 3 or 4 jobs with them since I've had kids, and we tend to shoot at like similar sound stages. And so it's like, oh, kids are usually showing up at lunch. They're going to hang out for an hour or so after lunch. They're quiet. They hang by the dolly. It's like, again, I use a lot of the same crew too. So if I'm shooting locally, if I have my way, it's the same 15, 30, same 15 like key people that like know the kids and get excited, and they're checking in with the sound guy. They're checking in with first AC. Like it's like, oh, they call my DP Uncle Brooks. Like we've traveled with him for 5 months this year, I guess. But yeah, it's funny too, because like even, when I was doing the one job in Atlanta, I'm in Atlanta on Eastern time zone. I was prepping a job with a production company in Israel. I had another job that was going back in LA. And so the baby would wake up at 3 a.m. and that's right when the EP in Israel would touch in. And so it's like, I wasn't sleeping anyhow. The DP I work with is like, I don't know how you're doing this, but I think we're both in that mode because we went back to back with these babies that we don't sleep anyway. And so, yeah, but that was to your point. When I was in Chicago and we were on the 2 jobs back to back, and I flew to Santa Barbara, that was my first solo flight in like 3 years or 2.5 years. That was the first flight by myself. And I was like, I'm putting myself in the front row of the plane. I'm not taking a back, because that's the hardest part. That's what I was telling Oren a little bit on the last job. We were helping out with each other, but it's like 15 bags. It's a couple check bags, and it's 3 cribs, and it's 4 pieces of a stroller set. And then they all have their own personal.
So you've got like 3 like pack and plays, basically, like 3. When you say 3 cribs, you mean like
3 pack and plays. Yeah.
So for people who don't have kids, a pack and play is like a collapsible crib that's about as tall as an umbrella, but like maybe 7 inches by 7 inches. It's like a what?
It's like
like a tall speaker.
Yeah, or like almost like a pop-up tent.
Yeah.
Right. 3 of those, 3 car seats. The stroller breaks down into 4 pieces, and then you got check bag, carry-on bag. They all get a personal item diaper bag, and then I have my my bag with my laptop, and I take a camera, and so yeah, it's a lot of stuff. And so that's the moment. My wife is amazing at it. She packs everything down to a science. She has the snack. She has new things in their backpack that when they get on the plane, they find it and they're like, oh my gosh, wow. And so she does so much of the heavy lifting of like figuring that all out and getting everything set up. And then there's just that moment where you're walking down the jet bridge, you got the kids and they're excited to be getting on the plane. I mean, they've done 30 some flights in 2 years. Like they've done a lot of travel. And so they get very fired up to like scan their ticket. But once they've scanned their ticket, they're like, they want to be lifted, but I usually have 3 bags in my hand at that time. And my wife's got like 6 other ones. That's the moment when I'm like, this might not be worth it. But then you get there and, they visit set or they see some new landmark or whatever the thing is. Or like, when we were in Atlanta and I did have this PPM that just went, it was supposed to be an hour and a half PPM and it turned into a 5-hour PPM and it kept going and going. And they were at the zoo. And so I got home and they were already asleep. And so the next day I'm waking up for the shoot and didn't get to see them. And that was actually far outside the city. And so then it was the third day where we had like a 10 a.m. start and they woke up and they were like speaking sentences. And I was like, wait a minute, 2 days ago, you didn't speak in sentences. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was just like a crazy thing, is like they could just fully talk. And so they came to that day, we were shooting outside in the middle of a college campus and we were doing a big tailgate thing and lots of extras. And it was MOS. And the client was all like 200 yards away in an air-conditioned gymnasium. And so it was really easy to have them hang out all day. And it was just like, wow, like to be with them and shooting this thing as they were able to like ask questions and speak in sentences. I was like, this is crazy. If I had just missed all this, like I would have been, if I would have done that job straight into New York and been gone for 3 weeks, it would have been really weird. So to like be there in real time, you're just like, man, and then for them to then, whatever knowledge they're gaining and learnings, to like be able to ask questions to like the DP who's a friend of theirs now. It's like, this is crazy. Like they're not just talking to dad and mom. They're like talking to Uncle Brooks here. Like they're talking to him. And so, yeah. And it's funny too, because like some producers just expect it. Like the thing I had been awarded for Google before the line producer even got to tell me the job was awarded, the EP calls me and was like, hey, I'm booking suites right now. How much space do your kids need? And I was like, wait, what? The job's happening? She's like, oh yeah, it's happening. And I want to make sure that they have room for all their stuff. And I was like, well, now they got to go, like they can't sit this one out if everyone's expecting them to make it. And so I guess it's part of the brand at times. I'm not sure.
I will say I worked with Tom recently, like a week ago.
Yeah, about a week ago.
And I enjoyed, there was a producer that was very communicative. I'd say we probably got texts or calls like 30 times a day.
Yeah.
At least. And what I liked about being on the job with you is that you were like, oh, putting the kids to sleep, feeding the kids, doing the kid, like, and I feel like for me, if it's like a friend of mine, I'll like kind of mention the kids, but I try to, it kind of depends. If I'm working with people that don't have kids, I feel like I try to not talk about my kids too much just because I don't want them to think.
Well, saying putting the kids to bed means
give me 30 minutes, give me an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Not like, oh, hold on, good night, honey, and then you're into it,
Right, but also sometimes you work with young people that don't have kids, and
right. So who wouldn't understand that? Is my point,
Yeah, and they're like just expecting you to be working all the time too, But it was kind of refreshing for Tom to be saying that, because then I could be doing the same thing. I'm like, picking up kids from school, dropping, like doing that, making dinner.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, and that's the thing, it's something that I always got to work on. And, that's the thing about the job is like when it's happening, it's the most fun job in the world. And it's easy to get wrapped up in like, oh, I can recut the animatics and I can do the storyboard thing a little differently. And like, if you're working on a treatment, you can always find that one more reference or image or whatever. And especially if I'm editing something too, if I've been invited to like help out on post, like there's always the additional way to try it, or like, oh, I could revisit the takes, and it could be very all consuming. And so that's a good reminder of like, around 5 o'clock, I try to take that hour to like put everything down and like be with the kids a bit, and, dinner time, or like putting them down for bed at the end of the night. Cause it gives me, a chance to reset, and gives my wife a break too. Cause she's usually, she's been with them the whole time. Again, like there's the one producer I worked with, he always knew, he's like, I hope you're feeding the baby right now, because I got questions. And I'm like, I was going to go back to bed. And then you're just up at 3 a.m. But yeah.
I can't, if I see an email, it doesn't matter what time of day it is, that's like a question about a project, I'm like,
you have to. Yeah.
I want to just get it out of the way and answer it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I have to wrap up soon. I just had 2 things I wanted to come back to real quick. Number one is you said that I left a comment on your short that was a rockin' good time, which does not at all sound like anything I would ever say. And I checked the comment and I did not say that.
What'd you say?
I said it rocked my heart.
I mean, that's kind of like a rockin' good time. That's the same sentiment.
A rockin' good time sounds more sarcastic than it rocked my heart, though. You know, could be more sincere, but I don't know. Oren,
I think rocked my heart. I mean, I met Tom like 7 minutes before this. There were no comments on his short film, and I was trying to just get one in there ASAP, and it did rock my heart.
You made a movie.
Yeah, I can say that I've sucked at short films. I mean, I think the short films are fine, but you know,
I like your short film. What are you talking about? My comment is sincere. It's not sarcastic.
No, I'm not. No, not your. You're not your comment, but you know, with our movies, we've made features and stuff, and yeah, they've all played festivals and had, you know, decent releases and all the things. And for whatever reason, short films, you know, every now and again, I'm like, I need to make you know, instead of making another movie, I'm like, I'll make a short film and try to get on Short of the Week or try to get, you know, some views on Vimeo or whatever it is. And I've never, in all of my shorts, never get into festivals, you know, even the festivals that we've played our features and they've done really well. I'm like, let me take the short film there. And I'm not talking about like, oh, we had a world premiere at South by for Tragedy Girls. Let me see if they'll take my movie. I'm like, hey, the Cleveland International Film Festival, where we sold out our movie 6 days in a row. Maybe they'll take my short.
That is a great
fantastic.
Festival.
Yeah.
That's a bummer. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Wild Man does feel like a very Cleveland friendly short film.
Oh, it's Ohio inspired. Yeah. It was, you know, it's me and my brother's lives smashed together because I was in a band feeling the emotions and he is Wild Man. And so, anyway, yeah, I've always failed at short films, getting seen anywhere. But they always, you know, what's funny is that they've always kind of come back in a weird way and like pay themselves off commercially.
How so? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I did this short film that was called HPHR, and it was about a set of twins that are like, you know, having a sibling rivalry over a date. And the two brothers are good friends of mine, and you know, I always poke fun of them of their handsome good looks. And I was like, we should do this poolside, you know, brother bromance movie of you guys trying to like compete for this girl, and they end up getting in a fight. And you know, it's hunky dudes in bathing suits fighting by a pool. And a friend that used to be a creative director who was doing a bunch of H&M stuff saw it and was like, oh my gosh, I want this energy and these dudes in this H&M summer thing. And so I got booked on this H&M job. I think I did like 3 H&M things because of the short film. None of them had hunky men in bathing suits, but that got me in the door. By the time they booked me, it was like back to school. And so I did this like weird kids back to school thing, but they're like, but we love your short film. And so, yeah, you never know. You never know what someone's going to see and say, that's the thing.
My other question is, and kind of what I was telling Matt about, that I feel like you just kind of skated over in your dissection of your career, commercial career, was you did do this thing where you went to in Chicago. I don't know if you're cool.
Oh, yeah.
Where you went to Chicago and you were just like, hey, I'm in town. Would you meet with me? And you just met with agencies, and a lot of those meetings that you literally just like knocked on the doors, like very intentionally, not like you knew them socially and you just like said, hey, by the way, I direct commercials. You were like, hey, I'm here. Let's meet. And a lot of your jobs kind of came from those meetings. Can you tell us like how to do that? How can we copy, like following your footsteps?
Be dumb. No. Yeah. I mean again, that was like, you know, it's, I have a friend who's a professional BMX athlete. He actually went to the Olympics, but he is very disciplined and very, you know, he has a rigid routine of like every day I'm going to get up at this time and do this workout and I eat these foods and I'm at the skate park doing these tricks. And I always try to think like, oh, how do you apply that to filmmaking? Like what, you know, it's very expensive to be like, I want to shoot a big crowd scene. I don't have enough, you know, I don't have enough Steadicam stuff in my work. Like I need to go out and shoot Steadicam scenes. It's very hard to do it in the same way. And I've never really taken to like, oh, I'm just going to go write stories and shoot iPhone stuff. So in the lull, in the like, man, I'm slow. What can I do? I realized like if I'm in this industry, it'd be the best benefit to me to like meet everybody I possibly can and let them know I exist. And so, I just started knocking on doors. You know, historically, I don't know what it was, pre-pandemic, and with that past production company, I always did pretty well in the Midwest. I always, whether it was food brands or maybe I just my non-sense of humor resonated there, and I was able to get jobs out of that market, fast food and snack food brands or freezer brands. And so we were going to Chicago for another job. My wife is from there, and so it's easy to like be able to be there for a longer time. And so I just went down the list. I looked up all the sales reps and people that represent.
How did you look them up?
Oh, just like, who represents MJZ, who represents World War VII, who represents Art Class. Like, just go to each of those websites. Like Harold Einstein is a favorite of mine, and so he's rep by Sue Rosen, and I'm like, let's just reach out, let's see. And so
So just for people that have no idea what the heck you just said,
yeah.
You went to production companies you like huge production companies that make Super Bowl commercials. You went to the contact page on their website that has who represents them, West Coast, East Coast, UK,
who their sales reps are
Midwest.
specifically, right? So like that's a different person or entity for each territory.
Like we had Nikki Weiss a few episodes ago, highly recommended episode, who is the Midwest rep. So you found those people. Yeah,
found those people, started emailing them. Some of them got back to me and either just did a call. What did I say to them? I was like, oh gosh. As an example, hey Mo, my name's Tom. I'm a comedy director and I do these types of things. Check out a couple recent examples. I'm in Chicago for 2 weeks and I thought it'd be great if we could get together. If you have a spare moment, I'll come to the city. I'm happy to meet and just hear what you got going on. And then people be like, let's grab lunch tomorrow or not. Again, you're sending 10, 15 emails in the morning and then 2 people write back. And
when you grab lunch, who pays for it?
I would usually offer, but sometimes people will buy me lunch. Yeah. I'll offer to buy it. Sometimes they'll buy mine. Other times it's already like, I'm an easy person to do drinks or coffee because I only drink water. And so it's really easy to be like, what are you going to get? I'm like, a water. And they're like, oh, well, let me get it. And I'm like, okay, you can buy my water. I'm not mad.
I feel like people are going to be a little confused unless you explain, Tom, that you literally only drink water.
Yeah, I made a bet when I was 13 years old to drink nothing but water for the rest of my life. And now my only drinking water is 21 years old. It's able to drink.
He literally one time accidentally drank sparkling water, put it to his lips, and almost died.
I didn't know. That hasn't happened.
But so I'm
you
curious,
told me you were at a meeting and you accidentally picked up the sparkling water.
I can sense it. Yeah, no, that was Sam Cosby at Anomaly. Agency producer was trying to get me.
Oh, that's fun.
Every now and again, I'll have a crew member. Or,
I take it back. That's not fun. That's not fun. As a vegetarian who was a teenager,
I've gotten you so many times, Matt. I've never even told you.
You must make that work for you, right? Like if you meet for quote unquote coffee or drinks, and you say, "Oh, I happen to only drink water," and then you have a little spiel, right? Yeah.
Not as much as you'd think. It's funny because it's really only when I meet new people that it comes up again. A lot of times people don't even clock it. And, a lot of people are like, oh, I only drink water too. And they're sitting there holding a coffee. And you're like, okay, well, not the same. But every now and again, I do find a kindred spirit. And so one of the agency producers years ago, this woman named Henny, she used to be with Space 150. I'm not sure. I think she might be at Carmichael Lynch now. But yeah, she worked on this job, became aware that I only drank water. And then it became a thing of, hey, there was a water bar in Minneapolis. And so anytime you're in town, you got to like visit the water bar. And then because of the said BMX
over
friend,
water. You drink water? I drink water too. That's so crazy.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, it's, I think it's definitely tough to like, pick up the laptop and be like, I got to email people and come up with ways to stay in touch. And it's easier as the relationships become more natural, as you've worked with people and you've done a good job and they've liked you, and to send them more work. Obviously, when you're busy, it's very easy to be like, okay, when I'm slow and I haven't shot anything, to come up with a way to like email somebody, and so one good thing about having the movies is that even the thing that Oren and I were working on, the agency producer of that job randomly was just like, I'm a horror fanatic. I'm going to go watch Five Nights at Freddy's. Does anybody care to see it? And I was like, my friends wrote that. And she's like, what? Your friends wrote that? And then she's like, what else have they worked on? I was like, I made a movie called Tragedy Girls. And she's like, I love that movie. And so, that job wrapped. It's been 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm going to email her and ask her what she thought of Five Nights at Freddy's and tell her that, this other movie's coming out. And it just becomes an easy way to like keep in touch. And so I'm always doing that stuff. If a movie I have is going to be on a new platform or something too, it's easy to, people always ask me, and in the moment you kind of forget, like on a commercial shoot, like, oh, you made a movie? Like, how do I watch it? And then it slips your mind. And so that's an easy one, is years later, or, a couple years go by, you're like, by the way, such and such, my movie is now streaming for free on Amazon. You should check it out. Here's my website if you know anybody looking for
freevee.com/
yeah. freevee.com.
So you emailed what? So you send like 40 emails, you get 10 responses, you meet with 5 people.
Yeah, exactly. And 5 might be high. I mean, and, some people just want to do a phone call. Some people are just like.
How many people did you end up meeting with on your Chicago run?
When I was in Chicago at the beginning of the year, I ended up meeting with like 6 people, but 2 of them were people that I like knew. 2 of them were like, hey, we've been in touch and we've just been like trying to get in front of each other. And so that was the trip where like the dots connected. But
what I like about this though, like having sales reps, like being able to be like, hey, here's the occasion is I'm from out of town and I want to meet.
Right.
And also your hit list is Googleable. It's not just like, oh, who do I know? You're reaching out to new, fresh people with an excuse is nice. You know what I mean? Because I think that's part of like, it's like, if you hit up the same people over and over again and you don't have anything fresh, then that's when it starts to feel counterproductive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's, it's funny because that's kind of like the thing that I feel like is my dream scenario, which nobody ever takes me serious about, is I feel like if I aligned with the right production company and I was able to say, these are the people I know, these are the areas where I've done well on my own, this is your sales reps in whatever regions, these are the agencies that have liked you, I'm willing to go I'm willing to book a ticket and randomly be in New York for a week just to meet people, or Detroit or Dallas or Austin, wherever. And I feel like, I haven't really had a lot of people approach me about rostering again. I'm almost up to 15 jobs this year on my own. And I'm like, man, if we, that's business, then some of those jobs are 400K plus. So it's like, that's money for a company that if we could align together and tackle some of these relationships, like there's a way to supercharge that, or just even getting, because there are certain agencies and production companies in this brave new world that are like, oh, it's very advantageous to have a freelance director. We don't want to deal with production companies. We don't want to deal with markups. There's mandates within our agency conglomerate to hire internal production. And so for me, it's like, I could just be slotted in and just do it.
Yep.
But then there are, independent agencies and other agencies where they're like, we only want people on a roster. We don't want someone freelance. And so in my mind, I'm like, man, if I aligned with the right company that was willing to like just chat through my relationships and, put the time in with their sales rep to be like, hey, yeah, let's put Tom around for a week in Chicago or a week in Minneapolis or wherever. And I'm not even asking them to pay for it. I'm like, I'll go there. I feel like there could be a way to like ramp
synergize
it up. But yeah. Not that directors aren't entrepreneurial. I don't think people always trust the entrepreneurialness. Because like when we made our movies, the only way we made our movies is we would get together at 8 a.m. and we'd be like, everybody puts 10 names on the whiteboard and you go call those 10 people and you report back. And we did that for 6 months straight, calling people, asking them to invest in a movie. And, we raised $500,000 in 8 months. And so I just tried to apply that same thought process of like, if I could reach out to 10 new people every day, one of them's bound to be like, yeah, let's meet. And, there's been moments where I've talked to, it's always easy in the new year, which is also the time that most people do it. Like, hey, it's the new year. But there's been times I've had phone calls in January that like you get booked on something in November. And it's like 11 months later, that thing pays dividends, And with Instagram, it's real easy. That's a classic one. I love to put the email like, I just want to be on your radar. And then they follow you on Instagram. And then you get on a little run where you're doing 5 jobs in a row or 6 jobs in a row. And it's like, this guy's shooting every week. What the hell's going on? And then all of a sudden those people are like, let's do something. And so, yeah, I mean, again, it's like, I got a shoot happening next week, about to leave for. I just got asked for another one in Chicago through a contact that I met earlier this year. That one is it's a 50-50. It's a double bid. But it always feels like it's going to be the end of the road. It's like, this is the end. No more work. And
well,
so,
Tom, I think you're going to be all right. I don't think it's the end of the road.
You never know. Me and Oren could get in that spiral.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Of this is it. This is over.
Oh, I'm spiraling right now.
Yeah.
I haven't shot since
last week.
Last week, yeah.
Last week, yeah.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those jobs you got this year are from those meetings, right?
Yeah, a fair amount of them. A couple of them recently were from those meetings. Some of them were just from like, maybe I wasn't in that territory. Like I did a big thing with BBDO, basically against everyone's advisement. BBDO has this free platform that you can sign up for, the Flare Marketplace, and like they'll put like open briefs on there. And they always ask you, they're like, oh, just put like a little one page, no images, just like a 1-page document together, like why you be a good fit. And so I was like, I haven't written a treatment in a while. I'm just going to write a full treatment right now. And
sorry, hold on. I want to back up for people here because so BBDO has, I didn't realize it was BBDO, but there's like essentially like an ad pitch marketplace called Flare, and there's a few others out there like this as well. I'm trying to think of like Gennaro. They feel almost like in that Tongle world, but they're like a little bit more elevated, right? So Flare is kind of like, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, kind of the best of that category, basically. But it's still kind of up for grabs, basically, right?
Yeah, as far as my knowledge, because they'll put stuff on there like, oh, 2-day TV, 250, 215s. You're like, that's you can make that work. But what their ask is always like, hey, submit 3 to 5 relevant examples, and then give us like a 1-page Word document that just says who you are, what you'd bring to it, and like timeline or proposed budget range. And so it was the start of the year, and I was slow, and I was like, you know what? Why don't I just make a full-on 40-page treatment and just design it and do whatever, and submitted it. And then that just kind of was like, wait a minute, this is different than what we normally get submitted on here. And so a couple of the people that were involved in that platform called me and were like, let's talk. And then I had, again, Midwest had been good to me. And so I shot for BBDO back in like 2017 or 18, pre the Flare Marketplace. And so I'd worked with them, I got along with them. And then, you just kind of you fall out of touch. I went off and made another movie and wasn't really focusing on commercials. And so I was like, I just need to get in front of them again in a serious way. And so, through that, BBDO Atlanta was like, oh yeah, this guy does good work. And so then that's how I ended up on the ham thing.
Did you book the Flare job, or was it just opened doors? They just were like, oh, great job. Let's talk. That's right.
I became an agency recommend, but the other guy, again, this is someone that I was like, oh, I would have picked him too. The other director that I was up against had a very, like it's the classic, oh, we're shooting a commercial where someone, takes a sip and does a smile. You better have that in your first clip. And so this other director had in spades 10 of the exact spot they were wanting to make. And it was like, even if I maybe had some fun ideas that got the creative directors excited and the agency producer excited, the client was like, well, for the safety of our money, we'll get this exact thing. But, it opens the door, gets you on the radar. And then, and that's the thing too, there's always the classic actor phrasing where actors will say, you got to separate the audition from the job and learn how to enjoy auditioning, whether you get it or not. And that's, I think that's part of how pitching goes is like, you're pitching for that job, but you're also pitching to be relevant to them. And I'll follow up with agents, if I pitch something and I don't get it, and like I had a nice experience with the creatives or the agency producer, like I'll stay in touch with those people. And like, when that job comes out, I'll send them comments or feedback about it, and then tell them what I'm doing. And
you let them know that it rocked your heart.
Yeah, it rocked my heart.
It's a very great thing to say to people.
It is, yeah.
Well, Tom, this has been very educational, pretty inspiring. There's so much to unpack in terms of just like follow through, networking, building out a body of work. So if you were paying attention, listeners, I think there's a lot there. Certainly I'm taking notes. There's some really good stuff. Do you have a few more minutes to hang out and endorse with us?
Oh, yeah.
Unpaid endorsements.
I got a weird one. I love the Criterion Channel streaming service. It's great. They've got a film from the 90s on there called Belly. It stars Nas and DMX. And I always was intrigued by it as a kid in the video store because it has this really incredible cover of them in like white suits and like it's big, awesome, blocky font. And I had friends who loved it. And I just like never was like, felt like, oh, like, do I know enough about hip hop to get this movie or whatever? Like, I never picked it up basically. So now I noticed, oh, it's now on the Criterion Channel. Interesting. And realized it's directed by Hype Williams.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a crime thriller. I'm watching it before I go to sleep in 10-minute increments, basically, like I've been doing a lot lately. That's what I've got budgeted in my life for right now. But it's bonkers. It's like, imagine if, Hype Williams in the 90s, kind of at the height of his powers, he's doing double exposures. The lighting is insane. There's all sorts of trick shots. It's really fun. And so I guess it's twofold. One, Belly's a cool movie. You should watch it. And two, those movies that you were maybe curious about when you were younger that you never picked up or whatever, they're probably streaming now. So, give it a shot.
You got an endorsement, Tom?
For those that live in Los Angeles, I recently stumbled into a restaurant, a dim sum house in Chinatown called Mama Lou's. Very nice. I was surprised. I didn't discount it, but there's the very, very popular in Glendale and Arcadia, Din Tai Fung.
Sure.
Yes,
sure.
Could be pricey, could be a long wait, could be
Sure.
hard to get into. And so, yeah, we were having the kids out for a late night exploration in their new wagon, and we stumbled across Mama Lou's, and I was like, damn, this is nice. It was very good. Very reasonably priced.
Mama Lou's, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Mama Lou's. But for anybody in the rest of the world, the rest of the country, yeah, a friend of mine who worked on the film Tragedy Girls has a movie coming out on Friday called It's a Wonderful Knife. And so it could be a wonderful time. If you like horror films, if you like crossover, thriller, slasher, holiday, hits theaters on Friday, so I'll probably see it.
Kaplan, what you got?
So I just upgraded to Mac OS Sonoma. Have you guys done it yet?
I have not.
So there's this feature. I guess like 50% of Mac users have the same problem, which is a desktop filled with 1,000 icons.
Mm-hmm.
There's this feature. It's called Stacks. Right click on your desktop, click Use Stacks. It takes like all your images, puts them in one stack. It takes all your audio files. Nice. So I went from like 200 things on my desktop to 3 icons.
Oh, wow.
That's nice.
It's amazing. And so now I have like my images. It's actually almost all images. And then I have screenshots. And that's it. And if you click on the stack, it opens up. You can see everything in it. Click on it again, closes. Amazing feature to just declutter your life and just give your desktop a little zen. Okay, Tom, if we want to follow you, TomMorrisFilm.com, Tom Morris. What's your...
I have all of them. I have TomMorrisFilm.com, @TomMorrisFilm, Vimeo.com/TomMorrisFilm. But that's really it. Yeah, I'm not good at all the social medias, but Instagram. I will be posting those promised photos of the family on set.
If you have questions for us or questions for Tom, we can always forward them along. You can hit us up at justshootitpod@gmail.com and across all social media @justshootitpod, and me @Mr. Matt Unlow.
And I'm @OKaplan on Instagram. This episode is edited by Noah Bayshore. Our producer is Tyler Small. You're listening to the music from the Free Music Archive and the artist Jazar. We will catch you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.